In Malaysia's criminal history, few cases have shocked public opinion and challenged the judicial system like the incident that occurred in 2006 in Kedah State. This was not just a brutal crime, but a struggle lasting over a decade between a family's thirst for justice and the privileged forces in society. Let's explore today's case with crime documentary files. Chee Gaik was born in 1981 into an ordinary Malaysian Chinese family. As the third of 5 siblings, she grew up amid economic hardships but remained resilient and ambitious. Despite her family's financial struggles, Gaik worked tirelessly and became the first in her family to be accepted into University Utara, Malaysia. January 14, 2006, began like any ordinary day. No one could have imagined it would become the day that changed an entire family's life forever. Around 6 p.m., Gaik's younger sister, Chee Gaik, decided to go jogging at a park near their home in Sungai Petani, Kedah State. Worried about her sister's safety going out alone, Gaik offered to accompany her. With superior fitness and a black belt in Taekwondo, she always ran much faster than her sister. As usual, Gaik ran ahead, her figure gradually getting smaller until she completely disappeared from Gaik's sight. Time passed, and when it came time for the sisters to meet up and go home together, Gaik saw no sign of her sister. Still hoping that her sister had gone home first, she quickly headed back. However, when she entered the house, anxiety began to rise as she discovered her sister wasn't there. Feeling increasingly uneasy, Gaik hurriedly returned to the jogging path to search for her sister. After just a short distance, she encountered a familiar shoe lying alone by the roadside. It was her sister Gaik's shoe. What made her heart seem to stop was the dark red bloodstain that appeared nearby. In that moment, complete panic invaded her mind. In her panic, Gaik rushed to find a nearby park security guard, hoping for help. However, the guard's indifferent and irresponsible attitude only added to her desperation. He casually suggested that the blood might just be remnants of another accident that had occurred earlier in the area, showing no intention to help or investigate further. Without a mobile phone and not knowing what to do, Gaik was forced to run home as fast as possible, her heart pounding with worry. Upon reaching home, she hurriedly reported the terrible news to her mother about her sister's mysterious disappearance. Recognizing the serious situation, the family immediately contacted the police without hesitation. The police response was swift and large-scale. A massive search team of 40 officers was mobilized, along with active participation from Gaik's family and close friends. They conducted a meticulous grid search throughout the surrounding area, leaving no corner unchecked. From 7 p.m. until 12:30 a.m., when night had fallen and darkness covered everything, the search continued intensively and persistently. However, despite their best efforts, they couldn't find even the smallest clue about Gaik's whereabouts. Gaik had vanished into thin air. Where had she gone? Had she encountered some unexpected accident? Or worse, had someone made a sinister plan to kidnap her? Countless tormenting questions without answers lingered in everyone's minds, creating a thick fog of anxiety and uncertainty. Time passed minute by minute as the tense search continued. No one expected that at 2:30 a.m., a call to police would shatter the night's silence and force the Chee family to face the news they least wanted to confront. A passerby had discovered the semi-naked body of a female near some bushes, close to a golf course in Seberang Perai. The scene was horrifying. The victim's clothes were disheveled, her t-shirt pulled up to her chest, the lower half of her body naked, her head showing signs of being beaten, and her body covered with wounds, a total of 50 injuries. What made people even more outraged was the forensic autopsy report, showing that she had not only been sexually assaulted before death, but also sodomized, with her private areas full of wounds and containing male bodily fluids, an indescribably tragic condition. Around her neck was a knife wound 6 inches, 15 centimeters, long, deep to the bone. This was the direct cause of death. When Gaik's mother came to identify the body, she initially didn't recognize it immediately because when her daughter left home, she was wearing a light blue t-shirt, but the body wore a red shirt. Only after looking closely did she realize it was because the t-shirt was soaked with her daughter's blood. When the cruel truth was revealed, Gaik father couldn't contain his rage and extreme pain. His anguished cry echoed, "The killer already assaulted my daughter. Why did he have to cruelly murder her too?" A question that not only expressed a father's pain at losing his child, but also revealed outrage at the unforgivable savage act. In the memories of loved ones and friends, Gaik was not only beautiful, but also a girl with a warm heart, always ready to help those around her. She had a passion for basketball and music, and had been an active and beloved member of her university's sports team. Her love story with her boyfriend was beautiful and admired by many. He shared that Gaik had an extremely cheerful personality, always understanding and caring. Throughout their 3 years together, they had never had a single argument or conflict. This made everyone ask the painful question, why did such a pure, gentle, and innocent young girl like Gaik have to bear such a tragic fate? Was this a random, violent crime, or was there a sinister plan that had been secretly harbored for a long time? Faced with this serious situation, police quickly established a special task force with high determination. They pledged to never stop trying, dedicating all resources to the investigation to bring the perpetrator to justice. This was not just a professional duty, but also a moral responsibility to give Gaik and her family a deserving answer. From Gaik Chun's detailed account, an important clue emerged. While searching for her sister's shoe, she had seen a black Proton Wera commercial vehicle speeding through the area. Combined with evidence collected at the scene, the investigation team theorized that Gaik had likely been deliberately stalked by those in this vehicle before being kidnapped. Based on this clue, police focused their investigation on 2 main groups: residents living in the area near the crime scene and all employees working at the nearby golf club. On January 16th, just 3 days after the horrific tragedy, an important discovery brought the first ray of hope to the investigation. During a meticulous examination of the area, investigators found semen and blood on a small white truck parked near the golf club. This was the crucial clue they had been seeking. Without hesitation, police quickly deployed decisive action, arresting 6 suspects. These were all males aged 20 to 40, with the common factor of working at the golf club, the location identified as closely related to the case. However, the hope that had been kindled was quickly and cruelly extinguished. DNA test results showed that the chromosomes of all 6 suspects had no match with the bodily fluid samples collected from victim Gaik body. This meant they were not the perpetrators, and all were eventually released. Not giving up after the first failure, the investigation team continued to systematically expand their search. This time, 12 other foreign workers also working at the golf club were brought into focus and detained for investigation. Hope was kindled once again, but quickly extinguished when DNA test results once again showed no match. They too were quickly released as innocent. The investigation didn't stop there. Another 37-year-old suspect was discovered and arrested at a local residence. However, like the previous suspects, he was also released. As each suspect was eliminated from the list, the investigation gradually fell into complete deadlock. Every direction of investigation seemed to hit a dead end, leaving even the professional team feeling helpless. Meanwhile, Gaik family was drowning in indescribable pain and torment. Each passing day felt endless for them, as the killer remained free and justice had not been served. A year passed with no progress in the case. Not accepting this silence, the Chee family actively organized numerous press conferences and public awareness campaigns, continuously calling for community attention and demanding that police intensify all efforts and mobilize maximum resources to quickly catch the killer and deliver justice for the deceased. Gradually, this voice spread and received strong support from public opinion. Pressure from the public poured toward the authorities, forcing them to face their responsibilities and the people's expectations. It wasn't until 2009, after 3 long years of despair, that the case finally showed significant developments. Perhaps due to continuous pressure from the victim's family and public opinion, police decided to review the entire file and conduct deeper investigations of all suspects previously interrogated. This time, they applied much more detailed and rigorous research methods, not missing any detail. Most importantly, they systematically collected DNA samples from all subjects to perform accurate comparisons. Finally, the persistence and tireless efforts of the investigation team were properly rewarded. Among the suspects being reconsidered, they discovered someone whose DNA showed very high similarity to the bodily fluid sample collected from victim Gaik Yap's body. The identified suspect was Shahril Jafar, a 28-year-old male with a gentle appearance, working as a car sales agent. On the surface, he had what seemed like a normal family life, with a wife and young son. However, what made the case more complex and sensitive was Shahril's special status. Shahril was not an ordinary person. He was born into a family of high social standing, with his father being Datuk Jafar Jamaluddin, a wealthy businessman in the jewelry trade, and notably someone bearing the prestigious title of Datuk. The title of Datuk in Malaysian society is not easily obtained. To receive this title, one must not only have special achievements, but also have endorsement and sponsorship from royal family members or high-level government officials. Those awarded the title of Datuk typically possess considerable social status, political influence, and assets in the local community. This meant that Shahril not only came from a wealthy background, but was also protected by a network of power and influence that could impact the fair trial process. When digging deeper into Shahril's life, the mysterious pieces began to fit together suspiciously. Shahril not only came from a well-off family, but also lived right in Sungai Petani, precisely the area near the horrific crime scene. But what increased the level of suspicion was the discovery of the car in Shahril's home. His family owned a black Proton Wira commercial vehicle, particularly with black rear-view mirrors. All these details matched perfectly with the description Gaik had provided about the car she saw speeding through the scene on the day of the tragedy. The convergence of these factors, matching DNA, convenient geographical location, and the car with identical characteristics, caused suspicion of Shahril to skyrocket suddenly. For the investigation team, these were no longer random coincidences, but systematic evidence pointing in one direction. On March 1, 2009, police officially detained Shahril for investigation. However, on the very day his family had sufficient financial means to bail him out, he fled Malaysia. This wasn't a hasty, unprepared escape. Shahril had carefully planned, secretly moving to Perth, Australia, and even successfully obtaining permanent residency there. His ability to easily carry out this migration showed thorough preparation and strong financial capability, very likely with support from his wealthy family. On the surface, it seemed Shahril had built a new life in a distant land and would never return to Malaysia. Despite Shahril's escape creating significant new challenges for the investigation process, Malaysian police demonstrated determination not to abandon the pursuit of justice for Gaik Yap. Shahril was officially placed on the international wanted list, and Malaysian police established close cooperation with Interpol. A global search network was activated with the sole purpose of pinpointing Shahril's exact location and bringing him back to Malaysia to face the law. After more than 2 years of persistent pursuit, in November 2011, important intelligence reached Malaysian police. There was information suggesting Shahril might secretly return home. This was the opportunity they had long awaited. On January 17, 2012, as soon as Shahril set foot at Kuala Lumpur International Airport, he was arrested by security forces in complete surprise. On February 2, 2012, at the Sungai Petani courthouse, Shahril was officially brought to trial and charged with murder. This was the moment Gaik Yap's family and all of society had waited for so long. This was already 6 years since Gaik Yap was brutally murdered. The Chee family and all levels of society hoped for a fair trial and that the killer would receive appropriate punishment. A year later, on February 25, 2013, at the Alor Setar High Court, this closely watched trial officially took place. The courtroom was packed, everyone holding their breath waiting for justice. The prosecution sternly accused Shahril of kidnapping Gaik Yap while she was jogging, then taking her to the outskirts of Sungai Petani, conducting inhumane assault, and finally cruelly murdering her. To prove these charges, the prosecution called many witnesses. A forensic expert testified in court, pointing out that autopsy results showed the deceased had clear head trauma, and the fatal knife wound at the neck very likely occurred when Gaik Yap was in a semi-conscious state. Based on the angle and position of the wound, she was very likely standing at the time. However, due to the complex crime scene, experts couldn't determine whether the perpetrator acted alone or multiple people committed the crime. However, it was completely certain that the sexual injuries on Gaik Yap's body and the torture wounds were all inflicted within 12 hours before her death. From the shape and depth of the wounds, the weapon was highly likely a double-edged knife. Gaik Yap's sister, Gaik Chun, also overcame her grief to take the witness stand. She clearly recalled the horrific scene that day, including the commercial vehicle belonging to Charul's family that sped past where her sister disappeared. However, what surprised everyone was that on June 25, 2013, the judge delivered a shocking verdict. He ruled that although the prosecution had provided considerable evidence, this evidence was insufficient to prove Charul was the perpetrator. He pointed out that forensic evidence could only prove Gaik Yap died from a stab wound to the neck, but couldn't directly prove that Charul caused these fatal wounds. Furthermore, although DNA similar to Charul's was found in the semen, the final test results weren't completely matched, and the possibility of others being involved couldn't be ruled out. Additionally, Charul living near the murder scene and his family's car being similar to the one discovered at the crime scene could only be considered indirect evidence or random coincidence, not sufficient as important grounds for conviction. Finally, based on the principle of reasonable doubt favoring the defendant, the court declared Charul innocent, and he was released in court. This verdict result made Charul leave the courthouse with unbounded joy, facing reporters' cameras with a mocking smile. This result struck the Chee family like lightning. They were indescribably angry and devastated. Gaik Yap's father even tried to jump from the second floor of the courthouse to express his anger and protest, but was timely stopped by those around him. The general public also expressed dissatisfaction. They couldn't accept such a verdict. For a while, waves of protest arose. Petition campaigns demanding justice for Gaik Yap and judicial review successfully collected 55,025 signatures to express outrage at this case's verdict. These strong protests from Gaik Yap's family and all levels of society hit the judicial system like a tsunami. The prosecution, under great pressure, decisively appealed Charul's acquittal in July 2013. At the appeals court, the deputy prosecutor argued reasonably and emotionally. He pointed out that the first 4 times semen and blood samples were taken from Gaik Yap's private areas matched 100% with Charul's DNA. This was ironclad evidence, an undeniable truth. The 5th sample showing foreign matter was very likely due to the body being discovered in the forest and contaminated from outside, absolutely not grounds to deny the previous authentic evidence. He also emphasized that Charul immediately fled after accepting DNA testing, clearly showing guilty psychology, attempting to escape legal punishment, obvious criminal psychology. In October 2014, the appeals court, after careful consideration and thorough examination of all evidence and case details, finally ruled that the prosecution's accusations against Charul had very sufficient evidence, enough for Charul to mount a defense. Therefore, the appeals court decisively overturned the previous innocent verdict, ordering the original judge at Alor Setar High Court to retry the case. On December 28, 2014, a new chapter in the case began with the retrial officially taking place. At the defendant's dock, Charul stood with suspiciously calm demeanor. Instead of showing remorse or at least taking responsibility for the serious accusations, he continued to stubbornly refuse to admit guilt. But what made the entire court and public opinion outraged was the story he fabricated. According to Charul's testimony, around 3 p.m. on the day the crime occurred, he was at home watching pornographic videos. After watching, he claimed to have gotten ideas and decided to call someone named Wayne, someone he regularly contacted to buy illegal substances. In this call, Charul requested Wayne to find him a girl his age, Malaysian. By 4 p.m., Wayne had called back to report that everything was arranged. Following instructions, Charles was asked to park near the golf club at 5 p.m., and the arranged girl would find him based on his license plate. According to Charles' account, Gaik had appeared and proactively knocked on his car window. He claimed they had agreed on a price of 350 ringgit, $83, for one encounter, then performed the act in the back seat. Charles particularly emphasized that he used no protection. The story he fabricated continued with Gaik asking for tissue paper afterward. When Charles' mother called after the conversation, Gaik had dressed and left the car. Charles insisted that at that time, she was still alive and completely uninjured. He continued to excuse himself, saying this was completely a voluntary transaction between two adults. Charles claimed it wasn't until the next day, when reading the newspaper and seeing the victim's photo, that he startled to recognize this was the woman he had transacted with the day before. Later, when trying to contact Wayne again to understand the situation, he could no longer reach him. Charles' defense was not only absurdly unbelievable, but also showed extreme contempt for the legal system. He tried to turn an innocent victim of savage crime into a prostitute to justify his actions. This was not only a terrible legal tactic, but also the ultimate insult to the deceased's dignity and her family. When hearing these cruel slanders, Gaik's family couldn't control their emotions. Having their daughter turned into the image of a prostitute in the killer's testimony caused them ultimate pain. The prosecution strongly refuted Charles' devil's advocacy. They pointed out Charles' words were full of holes and completely unreliable. Conducting illegal transactions with strangers in a car in broad daylight was itself unreasonable. Moreover, if Gaik was really a prostitute, Charles not using condoms made even less sense. The prosecution also emphasized that DNA test results and Gaik's genital injuries were all ironclad evidence. They also questioned Charles' father's testimony, noting his contradictory statements and obvious lies to cover for his son. On June 2, 2015, both defense and prosecution delivered their closing arguments. On August 9, 2015, the judicial officer announced the verdict. He ruled that the defense couldn't raise reasonable doubt about the prosecution's accusations. The prosecution's evidence was sufficient to prove Charles' guilt. Finally, the court convicted Charles of murder, and under Malaysian law, he was sentenced to death. Hearing this verdict, Gaik's family burst into tears. This was the result they had painfully pursued for years: comfort for their daughter and justice's victory. As expected, Charles wouldn't accept the death sentence. Like a cornered beast, he appealed to the Court of Appeal in 2016 and the federal court in 2018. On November 29, 2016, the Court of Appeal, after careful deliberation by a panel of 3 judges, unanimously rejected Charles' appeal. The judges clearly stated that existing evidence was sufficient to support the murder charge against Charles. Charles still wouldn't give up, continuing to appeal to the federal court. On January 25, 2018, the federal court, based on circumstantial and forensic evidence, unanimously ruled that Charles bore inescapable responsibility for raping and murdering Gaik, once again rejecting his appeal. In October 2018, the Malaysian government announced it would comprehensively review and abolish mandatory death sentences. This news caused major waves in society, affecting over 1,100 people sentenced to death for various crimes, including Charles. Under strong opposition from victim families and society, the government eventually compromised, stating that death sentences wouldn't be completely abolished. Judges would have discretionary power to choose between death penalty or at least 30 years imprisonment. In April 2023, Malaysia officially abolished mandatory death sentences and life imprisonment. The amended law took effect in July, giving Charles hope for sentence reduction. On May 29, 2024, the federal court heard Charles' appeal for sentence reduction. His lawyer pleaded for reducing the death sentence to 30 to 40 years imprisonment, claiming he had participated in rehabilitation programs and showed genuine remorse. However, the prosecution firmly opposed, pointing out that the rape and murder of Gaik was extremely vicious. a rare case among rare cases with exceptional brutality, causing ultimate pain to the victim and family. His flight to Australia further showed his intention to evade justice. Ultimately, the federal court maintained the death sentence, and Charo lost his final chance to escape capital punishment. This case has officially concluded. Thank you for following along and see you in upcoming videos.